Welcome to CrossPlatform podcast, where we discuss how to solve productivity problems across platforms. I am Augusto Pinaud,
And I'm Art Gelwicks.
and today we are on mute. Oh well, at least that's hope that is not going to happen.
It may happen. Who
But
knows? It may happen.
I have said, I have joked to clients that during the pandemic we all reach level expert in talking in calls, Zoom, Meet, or Teams with the mute on. We have all done it. We are all very, very good at it.
Yeah, it's one of those funny things from a behavioral standpoint that we do it intentionally and we forget we did it. And it literally happened like 5 minutes before you realize that you're on mute. And you're often if you're like me and you will do it occasionally, you will tend to continue to do it occasionally because you're trying to be cognizant of eliminating background noise and things like that. But yeah, I mean, today's topic, this is one that we've dealt with all the time. We deal with all the time, and this is video conferencing, podcasting, all of this. How do you effectively work with video and audio on different platforms with different tools? Uh, it's one of those things where no matter how hard you try, you're going to wind up into issues at some point in time. There's just no way around it.
There is no way around it. Not only that, I think it's something that we are going to see more and more and more, not less. you know
I agree. I
Remote and hybrid are here to stay, and that means tools and skills are going to be here, and you need to be thinking about it and consider those.
I think as people get, especially post pandemic, um, as people are more comfortable with video as part of the communications process, um, they'll get more comfortable with it. It's the iterations of it. It's the forced feel of it at times that I think people are adverse to it. And I find it ironic that people who often don't want to do video, which is a lot, I'm myself included at times, um,
Yeah.
often don't want to make a phone call either. They don't want, they don't, they're not looking for that synchronous communication process. They're quite happy and comfortable with asynchronous communication. So, is that a terrible thing? I don't think so. I think a lot of the times the messaging that you get and the visual communication that you can get in a video is, while it's nice, it's not critical in most cases. Um, One-on-one conversations, I think, is a little bit different. Meetings, I think, are in an entirely different conversation. But before we dig into the variants, um, let's talk a little bit about the tech itself. On the PC side, there are you basically can't buy a laptop anymore that doesn't have a webcam built into it. You can go through and do a search in Amazon and search for webcam, and you will find thousands of them out there. I probably exaggerate a little bit, but hundreds uh, of varying size, varying resolution, varying quality. Um, all of it's readily available. And I remember not that many years ago when it was actually an effort to find a webcam or to get one set up and get one configured. And now it's just kind of part and parcel with the equation. When on the Apple side, on things like the MacBooks and all, when did they start including webcams as part of the staple? It's been a long time, hasn't it?
It's been a really long time. Apple came with that eyesight. That was the first official Apple webcam. That it was a silver cylinder. It was a very cool thing at the time. But I now you're going to make me research that because I will be curious. But at least on the laptops, it's been very, very long time. On the iPads, it's been since 2012, and that's easy because that's what I work with. But let me check when the MacBooks start having cameras.
So just looking at the PC side, the first webcam was really it shows you where it stands. Back in 1991, a webcam was pointed at the Trojan Room coffee pot in the Cambridge University Computer Science Department so that anybody could see at any time if there was coffee in the coffee pot. So immediately it had a high value purpose. Um, and I don't think that's a terrible idea. I'm thinking that maybe I should set up a webcam to make sure that I have coffee in the coffee pot, but I digress. Uh, Starting with that as part of the built-in functionalities, since 1993 to today, I mean, the technology has gone by leaps and bounds, but notice behavior hasn't. I
Mhm.
mean, this has not become a readily adopted thing. Even today, after 3 years of working remotely, 3+ years of working remotely for many people, it's still not an integrated part of their daily activities. It's just kind of there. Often it's one of those things that they're forced to use rather than actually willingly do. Now, on the mobile device side, and here's another quiz question. When did the first front-facing cameras start to show up on iPhones? Do you recall? I don't remember.
I think that was on the 3GS.
Okay.
The 3 and the 3GS, and one of those two. And on the Mac side, but I can't find out. On the Mac, that was on 2006. So since 2006 coming up, uh, Max has had a microphone and a camera.
All right. So I'm looking here just out of curiosity. The front-facing cameras. Okay, here's an interesting one.
3GS, 2009.
The the first front-facing camera, period, on a handheld device was the Game Boy camera, released in Japan in February 1998. And I actually do recall that thing. But it looks like the first camera, front-facing camera phone was the Kyocera Visual Phone, released in May 1999. Um, so it stored up to 20 JPEG digital images, and that was just stills. That's not even talking about doing streaming. So, so here's an interesting thing, and it's a curiosity I have. What do you think on the mobile side compelled Apple users to start using their front-facing video or front-facing cameras for video and video chats and video calls? I have something in the back of my mind. I'm curious if you have the same thing.
So Apple make a big push in 2010 for FaceTime, okay, and trying to introduce their own version of communication. And
Mhm.
before that, you could use things like Skype, and there were some softwares that allows you, but there was not really a standard universal. Not everybody had a camera. Let's start by that. And what the iPhone FaceTime had at the time is if you have an Apple device, okay, at that time it was a Mac or a phone, you could make calls all over the world through Wi Fi. Yes, you could do that through Skype at the time, but most people did not know Skype exists. Skype was not that mainstream at the time for people to know. And so that I think was the big thing. But it was introduced as a cool family thing. It was a personal thing. Oh, you want to see your friend, you want to have a coffee. It was not really for work. The work came much later. At that time, I had already worked for a company. I worked for a company who the owner of the company was big on video communication. And in 2004, they has offices in Los Angeles, Boston, and France. And we have a camera in the conference room where we could sit everybody in a virtual conference room. At that time, that was wow technology. Okay, we understand now that's automatic for 2023, but in 2004, that was wow technology that we could sit with the French people and, talk live in the camera like we were in the conference room. That was very awesome. One of the issues is how this was introduced. This was really introduced as a personal thing. It was not really until Zoom, if I remember correctly, that we begin really doing more work introduction. Even when you did Skype calls were not meant to do video conference. It was to share your screen, but it was not push to put yourself in video. Could you do it? Yes, but it wasn't push to do it that way. It was really Zoom, I think, who begin pushing that. And there was a lot of resistance, and understandably so. It was not really until the pandemic that a business really took into video conferencing as something critical. Even many organizations before the pandemic had voice over IP or communication through the computer, okay, and using the calls, the Teams call and stuff. And in many corporations, okay, the Bluetooth port on the PCs are or is still blocked. So
Hmm.
when users go there, okay, they need to use or a 3x5 headset, or you get really, really bad audio. And it's for me very interesting. In 2023, we still have that issue where people then go and pick in the with the microphone and the speakers of the camera, and their audio is not that great. And
Hmm.
many people still don't own a headset, not for their phones, not for the computers. We are seeing on certain organizations that then people add more than one device to Teams or Zoom, so that way they can show their screen but use their phone for the communication, so they could use the headsets. And there are accessories that will solve that issue. But again, mainstream, those accessories don't reach, the people.
Yeah, just doing some quick lookups. Zoom really hit the market in 2012, so it's actually been around longer than I thought it had been. When you look at apps like Google Meet and WhatsApp, you're talking a time period of 2017, 2020 for them really to get even
Mhm.
introduced to the market, much less get a foothold. WhatsApp being, the major messaging part player on the Android side in the rest of the world. Um, for some reason here in the US, we still live and die by SMS text messaging and RCS. I don't know why, but we do. Um, so when you look at
And I
those
will
two
tell you why.
platforms,
And I sorry, I will answer
mhm,
you the why on that. Text message in the rest of the world is still expensive.
mhm,
Okay, that has changed now, but at the time WhatsApp came, we United States had already unlimited text messages, while the rest of the world were paying for a range. I don't know if you remember on your cell phone
mhm.
where you used to pay up to
Oh,
500
heck yeah.
messages or 100 or whatever it was. WhatsApp, the first one actually was BlackBerry Messenger. BlackBerry
Yes.
Messenger was the first system that came and offered one thing that was incredible for at least for me at the time, is that I could send free text message anywhere in the world.
Mhm.
And through the walkie-talkie and Nextel, you can talk for free anywhere in the world. That was the reason I had one of those things. So in Latin America, for Latin America and Europe, okay, you pay for the, I don't know how it is today, but at that time you pay for the volume of text messages. WhatsApp as well as BlackBerry Messenger were the first two who offer for free. Actually, when you look into the Apple ecosystem, it was not until Apple made the blue green distinction, okay, that you could send messages out of the text count, and you can send them for free internationally. And at the
Mhm.
beginning of the iPhone, that was the reason why that blue dot was so important, because if you were blue, I could send you messages for free anytime. If you were green, I needed to figure out where you were before I hit send. So that was very critical.
Well, and that's, I mean, it partially goes into the whole segmentation of when you're dealing with SMS, it's a carrier-based packet send versus something that's living on data servers.
Mhm.
FaceTime lives on data servers. iMessage lives on data servers. WhatsApp
Right.
lives on data servers. SMS and RCS do not. They go from carrier to carrier. Different technology, different approach.
Mhm.
We got sold a bill of goods years and years ago when they said, oh, you've got unlimited text messaging. Why? Because there really wasn't anything but text messaging available at the time. And that got its foothold in. And why we have not wised up. And now we have started to see some of that change a little bit. One of the most popular messaging clients out there is Facebook Messenger. There's over 1 billion users of Facebook Messenger. Why? Because there's that many people using Facebook. So it just kind of fits hand in glove. But that's all text. As we start to get into this evolution of doing voice messaging and video messaging, that's almost a mid tier to the high end, which is real time video conference, real time video chat, basically what we're doing right now. So we went from text messaging, we jumped all the way to the top level, but we never got good at the middle. And that's one of the things that I think is most amusing. I recall being in corporate offices for years and going into a manager's office who would be sitting there recording a voicemail for someone, not calling them and getting their voicemail and leaving them a message, but actually using the system as it was designed to record a voicemail and then send it to a mailbox. So they would have a voice message they could play back. And the
Mhm.
process of them doing that, the mental process, was radically different than if they had called that person. Because if they called the person, they would just, here it is. This is what I wanted to tell you. But if they were recording it to send it, often they'd go through it 5, 6, 7 times. They'd record it, record it, erase it, correct it, record it, and then finally send it. Is that a good thing? Personally, I think so. I think you're getting a better quality message because you're able to focus on what your message delivery is. I just don't understand why we never develop that as behavior. I mean, we will happily sit there and send a text, but we won't go through and record a voice message to most people. At least behaviorally, I've seen across the board, most people won't do that. There's some that is their adopted thing, the same way that they will use speech to text to type on their mobile device. So they're comfortable with the verbal component of it.
Mhm.
But when we think about this live streaming capability, this back and forth video conference, uh, I think it's one of those things where, from a technology standpoint, you're absolutely right. That's the first hurdle, is getting your tech right. The second is getting comfortable with doing it on both sides of the fence. So let's talk about the tech a little bit. On the Apple side, I know we just talked about the iPhones and everything. Having front-facing cameras now on iPhones is a standard. It's a selling point. It's actually, the cost of doing business. You have to have that. Same on the laptops and everything else. So if I were to be working with not a mobile device, because we know that's already prepackaged there, what would be the kinds of things that you would recommend that somebody have if, let's say, they had a MacBook and they knew they were going to have to do video conferences a lot? What are the accessories that you would recommend they invest in?
So let's start by saying earbuds. That will be the first one. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you go Bose, you go Amazon, you go Apple, you go Samsung. Doesn't matter. What matter, in my opinion, is what is comfortable. Okay, my ear works great. I have, a standard ear apparently, so the apples work perfect in my ear, and I can therefore they can stay in my ear for hours of hours of hours. Okay, that is very important. There is nothing more annoying than the thing on your ear bugging you. So that is the first thing. After you define that, then when you find that pair that really works, then the question is, can you connect them directly or not? And it doesn't matter if it's a Windows, if it's a Chromebook, if it's a Mac. There are some that you can connect easily. Hey, if you have a Mac, an AirPods will connect very easily. But there are also many accessories that will allows you to connect that. If your machine is locked, 12,000 produce one called the AirFly that you can connect on the 3.5 and then will connect through basically any AirPod. Okay, so that works for the Mac, that works for the Chromebook, that works for the PC, regardless how loud that machine is. The problem I found with my clients is not the ones who have unlocked machines, is the ones who receive a corporate locked machine that now they cannot use the Bluetooth, or they, in some cases, they cannot even buy a Bluetooth headset to plug in the USB because that port is locked for those things. So that's when I recommend this 12,000 component. Um, but the most important thing in my perspective is comfort. How comfortable are they? Can you really stay with them all day? I had from many years back an old set of Bose noise canceling headset. Okay, are they incredible? Yes, but you put those things, and number one, are very big. Number two, my ears get very hot. Can I do all day with them? No. I mean, I need to be on a cold office to be able to do that all day, and it still probably will not be uncomfortable. So doesn't matter how great they are, they don't work. They work great for that plane trip. They work great, when I want to do certain things, but it's a very limited time. So that is the first task that I tell people they need to find. What can you resist on your ear 8 hours? Because if you go to the normal meeting thing, you're going to be talking between 4 and 8 hours on the phone. So are you really telling me that you're going to take it every time you finish the call? Most people, it's moving in meeting, don't have time to think
Mhm.
that this thing is there. The only moment you remember that thing is there is when the battery die. Okay, that bring them to the second issue. Apple, and I think Samsung does too, I don't know other brands, do something very, very cool. That is, if this headset start running out of battery, I can put the other one on
Mhm.
my ear and nobody knows. That change is invisible. So that for me now comes into the features that I like. Why? Because if I'm talking to you, the only thing you will see is that I change headsets, but the conversation will flow continuously, and the chances of failing, lost the call, etc., are very, very low. So that is something to consider, how you can get to work with that. The third thing, now that you find something that is comfortable in your ear, is the quality of the microphone. And last night was fun. I was driving, and then I was talking to somebody, and I normally talk to the Apple headsets, and they were in my pocket and called. I was in the car, so I picked through the Bluetooth thing in the car, and we're talking. And in a moment, this person I was talking to me said, "You're not on your usual headset because the sound quality it's awful today." I said, "Hold on,
Mhm.
headset. Can we continue our conversation?" Okay, because the speaker, so the way you are hearing may be fine, but what the other ones are hearing is as important. So the microphone, it's very important. I have seen people who have bought imitations of the Samsungs and the Apples of the world, etc. And yeah, they look cool. Yeah, they look like the real thing, but the speaker may be okay. But then when you go to the microphone, all bets are off.
Yeah, there's no question in my mind the sound quality is more important than video quality, flat out.
Mhm.
Um, now I'm going to backtrack a little bit on the things you said and talk about them on the PC side.
Good.
I agree. If somebody's going to go through, for example, a lot of times with businesses, I'll be getting them kicked off with things like Zoom or Teams, for example, if they're going to invest in any accessory to make that easier, the first thing they do is invest in a good headset. And I tell people, don't bother with wireless to start. Get yourself a wired headset, either USB, or even if you've got a locked down corporate machine where you can't use any USB devices on it at all, fine. There's odds are really good that it's got a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack on there, and those jacks support a microphone. So you get a headset that has a microphone that supports that 3.5 millimeter jack, and at least you've got something. But a headset is critical. Do not use the microphone on the laptop and the speakers on the laptop for your sessions. It is just an awful experience for anybody who has to listen to you talk.
Mhm.
And it goes back to the audio quality. Now, if you're able to take that step and get a decent wired that you can wired quality will almost always be better, and the batteries don't die. So there's a lot of them out there. But you raise a very good point. If you have wireless or even wired, the fact that you're getting audio through both ears will make you feel like you're inside a tin can at times. It will make you feel very muffled. It makes your voice sound weird to you. So to get around that, you do what you're doing and what I'm doing right now, and you get a wireless set of earbuds that support one earbud at a time. And you can have that in and you can still hear yourself talk. That's a great way to do it. But now you're fighting the battery thing. The fact that you can have one in at a time basically doubles your battery life, which is
Correct.
nice. It's very convenient that way. But again, I go back to saying, look, get yourself, if nothing else, always have a backup wired headset available to use. If you're going to do a lot of meetings and a lot of audio work, like what we do, investing in an external mic, like what we have both have up on the screen right now, is worth it. These mics you can get for about $40, $50. You don't have to spend a fortune to get these external mics. And the quality is worlds better than anything that you'll have through earbuds or anything like that. But
Mhm.
always remember, the experience that someone has is not based on what you look like. It's based on what you sound like. Taking time with whatever app you're using to go into the settings, to go into the microphone, and they almost always have a test where you will do some sort of little recording. You'll do that testing 1, 2, 3, testing 1, 2, 3, and it will play it back to you. Do that. Make sure you know what you're going to sound like, because no matter how much money you've spent on really fancy earbuds, the microphone is in your ear. It's not in front of your mouth where the sound's coming out. So the quality is going to be lower. Now you can get around that. You can get I want to say the lavalier mics, which like pin to your shirt or
Yeah.
something like that.
Mhm.
Those are good ones. You can get those. There's a lot of different options, but focus on your sound quality first. Don't worry what you look like. Um, so let's say we've got the sound quality nailed. We're either using a wireless headphone or headset, we're using a wired headset, we're using earbuds. We've found something that works real well. From a video standpoint, do you have a recommendation on the Apple side of something that they should look at or invest in?
Apple, if you live on an Apple ecosystem, Apple make it very easy. They give you two versions of the AirPods, the pros and the non-pro. They even give you the big ones. The name is escaping me right now, of course. The Pro Max, okay, that are really big. And Apple has make sure that their microphones are decent enough that the sound quality work. That said, I tell people to, if you are not looking into the standard, the wide you want, but you are very concerned about the quality, look into Plantronics. Okay, Plantronics has years doing, headsets, and they are very good. So that's one brand that if you don't
Now,
want to use, sorry.
how about on the video side of the equation?
On the video side of the equation, you have the Apple camera. You there is two things you can do. If you want a better video than what I have with the standard camera on the MacBook, the MacBooks now, the newer version, I think it's 3 years, forward. So since they were M1s, you could put your phone, there is an adapter, and you can use the camera of your phone. So you now
Mhm.
get a very high quality camera. I yet have not been on a call where I think that's really necessary, where you need to have that to really, get into that. But there is people that like that.
I'll agree with you completely. Unless you are doing production video work or you're doing streaming for public consumption, looking at a high-end webcam is unnecessary in my book.
Hmm.
I have a high-end Samsung Galaxy notebook. It's an extremely powerful notebook, and it's got a 720 HD or a 720p HD camera in it. I could readily use this. For the type of video work I do, I have a 1080p webcam that I'm using right now. You can get 4K webcams. You can get all kinds of stuff. For 80 to 90% of what you're going to be doing, though, especially if you're having video calls and meetings and things, that's overkill. And many times you're actually pumping out more data than is really necessary. So I
Hmm.
typically recommend to people say, look, the primary reason to look at getting an accessory camera is not so much to increase the quality of the camera, unless the camera that you have on like your laptop is garbage. It's to be able to move the camera to a better position.
Right.
Because if you're, for example, if you're using your laptop and your camera's in the top of your laptop screen and it's on your desk, it's an uphill shot. They're taking the whole meeting is shot up your nose. So being able to move the webcam to a better position, something that's
Hmm.
more natural, makes a lot of sense. And you'll see there are webcams out there. I forget the name of the brand. It's basically a center cam. It's on a little transparent arm that hangs down the center of your monitor and puts the webcam dead center in the center of your
Yeah.
monitor. So it looks like you're looking, if you're looking at your screen, it looks like you're looking right at the camera.
I
That's a
have
little bit
one of
more
those.
natural.
Yeah. I have one of those called the center cam, and it's exactly that.
Okay.
It's a dot on the center of the camera. So it is great when you are doing presentation and you're using that screen, because instead of look up or down, you're looking to exactly what you're presenting.
Right. And that's there for the types of meetings. For example, if I was in a business environment where I was a trainer or a presenter, that
Hmm.
absolutely makes sense because it's the quality of the message as well as the message itself. Um, but
That
for
said,
normal operation,
That
it's
said,
overkill.
from the Apple perspective, okay, one of the things that has happened to me was that, and I had that center camera for that reason, and now I use the iPad and to do, even if I need to use the Mac for certain things and the iPad to do that presentation, because Apple on the iPads put that thing they call center stage, where the camera follow and zoom automatically. So
Hmm.
you look 10 times more professional. Video is the same camera, but it looks as it is professional video because it zoom out, it zoom in, it follows you, so it looks a little bit more professional.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's when you start to think about that threshold. Do I need this just to communicate? Or is the visual and the audio part of this part of the experience? Is it part of the message? And if it is, then yeah, I my camera, like I said, it's an HD Logitech camera, but it also has some very nice software that allows me to dynamically adjust the zoom position and apply overlays and things like that. Things that, again, 90% of the time for business meetings, I will never need. But for other work I'm doing, I do need it. So we've got the audio nailed. I think we've got the video nailed.
You went on mute.
I went on mute.
Now you're back.
Huh, that was weird. Okay. I was not on mute. Contrary to the title, I was not on mute. That was a hiccup.
Oh, oh.
But that's okay. So there's a perfect example of it. Let's talk about the software issues. You can have what's the software you normally use when you're having to do video conferencing?
So I use Crisp. It's a software called Crisp. It's only work in the MacBook. I really have a MacBook only to do this. It's the reason I have one is because not every there are two things. Not every platform allows you to connect on the iPad, and The iPad until now had not allowed me to connect a good quality microphone. So for podcasts, for trainings, I like this idea of have a powerful microphone. So now the rumor, or according to Apple, on iOS 17, I will be able to connect this microphone to my iPad, and that will change some on that if I can use it to connect to that. My biggest hurdle to change will be crisp because I can sit here in my office, I can turn the air conditioner, I can do a lot of things, and crisp will filter most of that noise. So it is very, very nice. I don't need to mute myself, I don't need to do anything, especially in this kind of things. It works incredibly well, and the noise can happen, and crisp tend to filter most of it.
Yeah, I use Crisp as well over on the PC side. I have found that while it can be a little bit persnickety get to work right, especially if you have multiple mics or multiple headphones, it can be a bit of a bounce around. But its ability to do live audio cleanup
Mhm.
is just
Incredible.
amazing. I have in my office a window air conditioner, and without Crisp, if I turn that on, you'll hear it in the recording. It's this constant drone. uh, my dog will bark at the every delivery man that comes to the house. But if I flip Crisp on, you won't know any of that's happening. It's occurring in real time audio cleanup. So it's a nice, again, it's a really nice kind of function. We're seeing more applications starting to include that kind of audio cleanup. Zoom has that capability, Teams has that capability. More and more of those streaming ones are starting to embed that into their software. But I don't think any of them are quite as good as Crisp is as of yet.
No, and on the iPads, and this is something that I've been seeing a lot with clients, is they are getting iPads to do the conferencing because they could connect their, most of the companies give them the iPad, and then they can connect the headsets easily, they can mute, they can get better quality than the PC, and then add the PC as a second screen when they need to show something. So that may be very, very interesting too.
So let's talk about messaging specifically. I mean, you're the iMessage guy. I'm a green bubble, so I really can't talk to that. Um, so I'll talk about some of the other apps as well. But how often do you actually FaceTime with other people?
I don't FaceTime much, to be honest with you. I probably have two friends, four friends, who which we will do a FaceTime call when we want to see the whole family together. So when we discussing last week on the episode about the Apple, and we talk about that, you will be able to put next to your Apple TV your iPhone to use it as a camera. That was exciting to me. I get it. It is 12 calls a year, maybe 20 calls a year. Okay. But it was very nice because it happens. We have a couple of friends who that's how we get, once in a while get all jump together and put it on the big TV and see each other coming and going through the call will be very fun. But it's not. And part of the reason it's not is because Apple has not pushed really FaceTime for work. When I think on work, even on my own, I live on iPads. And if I'm going to make a work call with you, it happened on Google Meet, not on FaceTime. Even that I have the ability to invite you to a FaceTime right now, even if you don't have a phone. I can send you a FaceTime call to your Android and we can talk on FaceTime, no problem. But when I think work, I think Google Meet, I think Teams, or I think Zoom. I don't think FaceTime. FaceTime is, for in my brain, it's more an informal thing, not it's you are my friend, we're friends, but it's not about work. It's different. I don't know. Probably the person I will do more FaceTime calls is my son, and the second person in our family who will do is my mother-in-law. Who That's how she calls to us, is through FaceTime. Other than that,
Hmm.
that is probably the only two consistent calls, I will say.
Yeah, that's interesting to me. On the Android side, I rarely, if any time ever, do one-on-one. There's like one person that I'll call using for non-work purposes that way, just because there's nothing compelling. No one calls me that way, so I don't feel an obligation or an interest to call them that way. Uh, I don't know that it necessarily improves I want to say fidelity of the conversation. I mean, what else is it gaining? If you look at most of the time when people will have those calls, they're not looking at the camera anyway. They're looking around at everything else in the room. They'll glance at the camera every so often, but it gets awkward to stare at the camera for an extended period of time and them staring back at you. And it's like, okay, why are
Right.
you looking at me? Unless they're trying to show you something. So that to me then takes us to, I guess, the oddest beast in my mind is why why do we have so little use of voice messages and video messages? Now, I know iOS 17 is going to be bringing out FaceTime video messages, and we've talked about this in a couple of different podcasts. That I wonder if it's going to change the dynamic, and I've actually heard people being concerned that that will get abused. And I'm sure that's an issue that'll come up. But is that something that people are just missing out on? Just sending a voice message?
Oh,
Or is there some reason why it's just not comfortable?
so it depends the use, and it depends when you need an answer. So if I send you a message right now and I need an answer relatively quick, it's not urgent. I don't need it right now, but I don't want them in 2 days. Okay. I will not send you ever a voice message, because for me, if I send you a text, okay, you can read the text while you are doing something else. If I send you a video or a voice message, it will require you to be in the right place to hear that. Okay. Not only that, depending the information I'm sending you. For example, if I'm having an issue, let's say you do IT. So let's say I'm having an issue with my server. Okay. I will not go into a voicemail and say, "Hey, Art, we are having an issue with the server, blah, 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 blah." Okay. That will be a text message, because I don't want to put that information. You may be on this grocery store and now you're listening
Mhm.
to the message, and we're sending that information to the whole world. So that's part of what I think make the voice and the video message challenging. That
Yeah,
if
I
the
think
information has some kind of privacy, or you feel concerned about the privacy of it, you will be less inclined to send it via voice or video than text.
yeah, and I think you and I are in complete agreement with that. My assessment is that the difficulty comes on the consumption side, not on the creation side.
Mhm.
People they're fine with doing, a voice message. They could send it. I mean, especially the people who are using speech to text to type instead of actually finger typing. The problem is on the other side, that means, and you're absolutely right, that the person has to be in a location to be able to consume that content.
Mhm.
Often it'll be that they need to have earbuds in, especially if it's audio content. They've got to have that there. If it's video content, well, now they've got to be in a place where they can watch it and listen to it.
Right.
And it's not as friendly as low fidelity straight text content. So I guess there's certain purposes and places where this could really be used. We just haven't seen the use cases play out. And a good example of that is the application that folded recently called Volley, which would allow you to do asynchronous video messages to a group back and forth, like having
Mhm.
conversations. And you could follow a threaded approach and you could post and you could respond. And The technology was really kind of cool. I did some volley work. Francis, who we do other shows with, has done quite a bit of volley work. Um, Interesting technology, but apparently it couldn't find a foothold because the company went under.
Correct.
And there's other ones like that. So I have to wonder: is there is this another case of a solution looking for a problem? I mean, are there use cases, and this is the question that I want to pose to you, are there use cases you can think of where having asynchronous video communication could be really useful?
Yes. And
Okay.
and again, the first part is what is the information you are sending. Okay. So for example, in corporations, companies, businesses, you have those town halls, okay, where everybody goes and connect. There is no reason to have that anymore. That can be, okay, anyways, there is a no-way communication. There is no questions in 90% of them. So just record the video, put all that you wanted to do, and email it to people and let people, you know, watch it at their time. For coaching, there is a place for those. Okay. So, for example, as a coach, I do with some of my clients that report in video once a week. Okay. So, once a week, you come record the video. Okay. We use Telegram. It doesn't need to be nothing long. This is what the update is. Shoot. And the reason for that in coaching is because you get a lot as a coach from the verbal clues that the person is giving. Okay, so that's turned to be very useful because now I can reply to you and say, "So, Art, why did you look anxious as you sharing your update?" Okay, but that's something that your voice I may or may not caught, but on your video I will. So those are two examples where that worked. I coach a lot of families because I do this work in productivity for parents and kids and families. And when you send message, certain message to the kids, the video will beat anything. Okay. For positive reinforcement, hands down. And for negative too, because it's not the same when you text your kids, okay, saying you did not pick your closet again, okay, and you text that when the kid get that message, unconsciously he will put a tone to that.
Mm,
I'm not saying you write it with tone. I'm saying the kid who receive it, okay,
mhm.
will get your best nagging voice, and that's how the voice they're going to use to read your message. So when you do it verbally that way, audio or video, the kid will listen the message in the way you intended. So, and that brings me to the last category in which these ones are important. When you are sending a message and you think the message may be misunderstood, always use voice or video. So if I'm sending a video to Art and I want to tell him, hey, um, the last episode, we have all these audio issues, okay, or we have one audio issue where you got on mute. But if I'm sending you that text, okay,
Yeah.
and I think, hey, Art may misinterpret what I'm saying, okay, and he may think that I'm thinking that his audio quality is not good, then that's not a text, that's not an email, that is a video that
Mhm.
should go in audio. So he will get my voice and he will not put tone into reading. I'm sorry, we all put tone into reading, and but you require now a level of trust to write back and say, hold on, did you send this message with tone or did I read it with tone?
Mhm.
And in order to set that clarification email, you need a lot of trust to the other person. So that's when video or voice wins all the time.
Yeah, there's no question that tone will be superimposed. For example, if people who have ADHD and are on that spectrum, there's a thing called rejection sensitive dysphoria, where actually you're hypersensitive to a negative response to things. And often you will apply a negative response to something, even though that's not what it's intended. Well, often that comes part and parcel with getting only the 7% of the message that you get in a pure text conversation. So when you look at this kind of back and forth from a business perspective, purely, I think absolutely taking time to, if you're going to do an announcement to a bunch of people, um, you could sit there and you could write an email and you could send an email out. Or can you record a 1 minute video, 2 minute video? And that's an important thing. I'm going to put a cap on it. If your video is more than 10 minutes, don't do it
Right.
because
That's too long now.
that's a whole different exercise. But if you've got something that you would write out this novel of an email, I'm willing to bet that you can convey the entire thing more clearly by just creating a little outline for yourself and just recording that out. And it could be just audio. In those cases, I often recommend use video. Get your message across, record it, post it, share it that way. You can always follow it up with an email if you want. But you're right. The fidelity of the messaging becomes much more important in the business environment. Having that back and forth conversation is a learned behavior asynchronously, but it can be extremely useful, especially in time shifted environments when you're dealing with people in various parts of the world, and you may not be able to talk to them directly. Let's say they're not 12 hours ahead of you or behind you, but maybe they're 6 hours ahead of you or behind you. Well, that's a weird time period during the course of the day. So now instead of going through and saying, oh, okay, I'm going to send an email and hopefully they'll read the email and understand it and get back, I can just record the message. They can respond back to the message when they get it. That's that's extremely useful and that's extremely compelling. Um, it is a behavior, though, that has to be learned to not be afraid of having yourself recorded. And I think that's one of the things that people, when they start to think about this is where they trip, transitioning from phone calls to asynchronous messaging. Because by its very nature, an asynchronous message includes a recording. There's a sense of permanence to what you're putting out there.
Right.
And that's a kind of a tough part. Now, if that's a concern, if that's something that you know from, let's say you run a small business or a medium-sized business and you want to introduce asynchronous audio and video messaging into your daily operations, looking at applications, messaging applications that allow you to set a period before those messages disappear. For example, I know Signal offers that capability. There's other ones that allow you to say this message will only exist for a day and then it's gone. It's not stored anywhere. It's not kept anywhere, nothing. Uh, that can sometimes help people get across that little threshold. It will be an adoption challenge. There's no question
Mhm.
about it,
Correct.
because then it's not treated like an email where they can go back and reference it. You actually have to go take notes on it. You have to learn that message. You have to listen to it. You have to gather that information. The upside is during that period, you can play it back over and over again to make sure you get everything with it. So there's a lot of pluses and minuses that you have to think about. When is the use case for these tools most effective? And when should I say, don't use them?
Correct.
And I'll give you the perfect example that I throw out to everybody. I say, if you're in a video conference call, and someone says that it's mandatory for you to have your cameras on, you don't want to be in that conference call. There's no reason for that. No reason whatsoever. Because at that point, all that is a control exercise. That is nothing to improve the messaging. That is nothing to improve the interoperability or the interaction between the people. It is
Right.
purely a control exercise. And at that point, you need to get out of that meeting. So as we hit the back end of this, what would be your advice to someone if they came to you and they said, "Hey, how do I how do I just make my video calls better? How do I get better at this? What's the one thing I can improve right away?"
And I will go back to, well, let's work on the microphone and let's work on the audio. Because again, things like crisp, as we said, can help with your noisy environment. things like having a good quality microphone will help. Don't worry too much. I think people worry too much about the video. No one on the camera really cares about seeing you. They don't, they they really care about being able to hear and understand you. Don't but nobody cares your quality of the camera is 4K or 720p. They don't care because they want to see, okay, this is a human, and that's as much as they go. So don't worry too much about the video, but worry about the audio. And I think people have that backwards. People is more concerned about the video and the background and all these things and less concerned about the quality of the audio.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. I think that's absolutely one of the best ways to do it. Um, the one piece of advice I give to people is start small. Don't start with all hands meetings. Don't start with, 20-person scrum meetings. Start interacting with just one person. If you've got a small team, you're working remotely, start interacting back and forth with them. Polish your skills. Work on that part and then go bigger. The
Mhm.
mistake I see all the time, it's embarrassing when they do this, is you'll have some senior manager or some C-level person decides that they want to roll out video messaging to an entire company, and their way to do it is they're going to do their state of the company meeting that way for the first
Yep.
time. That's just a terrible idea. Terrible, terrible, terrible idea. Don't do that. Um, or go ahead and do it, because we can always use more use cases for
For
why not
examples.
to do that. Yeah, I'm always looking for good examples as to why not to do something. That's one of them. So, and who knows, if you do enough of it, you do enough video work, you do enough audio work, you might start a podcast. Who knows?
Why not? Why not? Oh, well, with this, we have come to the end of our show. Follow us where you like to listen to podcasts, like us or subscribe to us and leave us a review. You can also interact with us on PersonalProductivity.club. We have a channel there for cross-platform. We are Augusto Pinaud and Art Gelwicks. See you next time from your favorite device. Thank you.